Well, according to the board, it says that the recording is in action, so I will assume they are correct. This is this week's May Brexit discussion group call for tactical sovereignty. We are now just a couple days into 2022, so we've got a new year ahead of us. Hopefully, it might be a little better than what we've seen in the past couple years, but I'm not holding my breath. I, I'm not a doomsdayer, but I do think I can recognize the direction things are heading in, which would mean that things are probably going to get a little bit worse before they get better again. And I think really what that's going to take is things are going to have to get worse enough to where the people stand up and say, enough is enough. And the people themselves will make the decision as to when things are going to change. That's just my opinion. But anyway, we've got Garrett with us here this evening from Freedom Unchained. I was with him for New Year's, and link for him is both in the chat and in the description box of this video. And I will add it also into the description box on YouTube as well, providing I get this loaded up to YouTube. But aside from that, Garrett, how are you doing this evening, brother?
Doing good. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. So it looked like you ended up kind of having an extended call there on New Year's, the New Year's celebration, looking at court cases and stuff like that. And I'll tell you what, man, personally, I have a lot of people, and nothing against anybody that's done it, all right, for starters here, but I have a lot of people that send me videos of their court cases or audios or things like that. And to me, it's just painful sometimes to watch or to listen to. Either in, no matter whether it's listening to the prosecution or listening to people defend themselves or some of the judges. I mean, it's all the way around sometimes kind of painful to endure. So I really haven't paid attention to too many of them for the past couple of years, at least, other than the ones that people send me and they want opinions on and things like that. Which,
that'd be interesting to get more of or people that actually understand this a lot better, trying to go in there. So we can start picking those apart and finding the mistakes that people are getting trapped. Is kind of how I put it. I feel like when you go in court, the judge is just throwing out traps for you to fall in it or fall on, and a lot of people just don't understand where they go wrong.
Yeah, that's actually true. And it's interesting. I've never really talked about it much, but friends of mine like Boris up on Tampa and his buddy Jim and some of them, they would go in, and I've done the same thing. I've let things occur to where I would have to get dragged into court. That way I would see things happening, get some experience. I could, say one of the easiest things to do was let 2 or 3 credit cards lapse and wait until that gets pushed to a third party that ends up taking you to court. And so you can get in and you can try like a different method with each one of them just to kind of see what happens. You know what I mean? And Boris and Jim and some of them, we're doing the same thing up at Tampa. And the way they were doing it, which was good, as opposed to the way a lot of people are, is they were doing it because they wanted to sit, listen to it again, a second time, a third time, a 10th time, to try and see maybe mistakes they made or things that were said to them. Because there's so many times where a judge is giving you an idea. He's saying, he's trying to give you a hint in what direction to move in. And so many people don't want to hear the judge. They just want to ignore it. You know what I mean?
They just want to fight with them a lot. You see that a lot.
They want to, right. They want to fight. And the judge is at work. He doesn't want to fight. He's got enough people wanting to fight with him in court as it is. So he tries to, lend the olive branch a little bit. And so many times people don't recognize it when that occurs.
Mm-hmm. Well, I watched one. I forgot how I came across to it, but it was actually, it was in a talk show actually, and so then I found it was in the news article. So I watched the video, and the gentleman had good questions, but the thing is, he just after he got a few questions out, and the judge let him speak and ask questions. He just started spewing out these questions like one. I don't know if they were I don't remember if they were questions or statements or both of kind of. And he didn't let the other side respond. Instead of saying, all right, one question, allowing the judge to respond or the other side to respond, and then, playing off of that, he had like just a list of things. He was just like, he was trying to do the religious thing, and like he was trying to get an interpreter for his own their language. I don't know, it was a whole bunch. It was kind of strange, but the point is that people just want to spew all this information out and not allow the other side to react to it, because that's what court is the back and forth, and it's that battle that you're supposed to be allowing the other side to respond. The point of the questions, when you're doing this stuff, the point of the questions is to trap them into their own words and lead them down a path.
All right. Well, and in my group, I've tried to show some of these things to members for them to listen to it and be able to recognize, like, if it were to happen to them, be able to maybe recognize little hints or see what's really going on. And it was kind of funny. I remember one time somebody had sent me an audio of their court case, and they said, when they sent it to me, they said, "Oh, I took over." He says, "I took over the court. I set up my own court." He said, I showed them who's in charge. I showed them who's boss. You ought to check this out. This is awesome. I really put the judge in his place." And I listened to it, and I'm thinking, dude, the judge just totally ignored you. You're running your mouth like nuts, and he's talking over you and rescheduling the case and moving it forward for the next hearing and this and that, and you're not even hearing a word he's saying. He is totally ignoring you. And I shared it to the group. I was like, I wouldn't sanitize it, so there wasn't a name or anything like that. I said, well, I want you guys to check this out, so that, if you think, for instance, that you are winning in court, sometimes you're maybe not paying attention. So you need to listen to this and check out what happened with this guy. And I said, if you want to hear it, just shoot me a message and I will shoot you the audio of it. I'll send it to you. I'm not going to put it out for everybody to, get a hold of. And one of the first people to contact me that wanted to hear it was the guy that sent it to me. And
he didn't know you were talking about him.
no clue whatsoever. And I perfectly described what was going on in his court case. You know what I mean? When I described the audio, and he didn't even recognize it then.
He was paying attention to you just like he was paying attention to the court. Mm-hmm. Not at all.
Exactly. Oh Lord. And I haven't heard anything from that guy in probably a year and a half. So I would only have to assume he's probably on vacation at the Gray Bar Hotel, probably.
Maybe.
But I titled tonight's little podcast "Who is the State?" because that's one of the first things that people kind of run into.
Who is the state?
Yeah, that's one of the first things I think people run into when they're dealing with court cases. Like the state of Florida, for instance, it's been forever since I had to go to court. But I remember, you get the summons and it would say, "State of Florida versus, Brian G. Parker." And for mine, a lot of people get on the kick of the all caps. Everything I've ever received from court has been in upper and lowercase for my name. It's never been in all caps. Mm-hmm. So
it really doesn't matter one way or the other, as I believe it. They're not going to listen to what you have to say about the all caps. It's their court. That's what, instead of people not understanding who the state is, people don't understand what a court is. They think a court is a building ran by the government. A court is, it's like, whose court is it? When I bring my claim forward, that's my court. So it's whoever brought that claim forward. So the state of Illinois, that's their court. It's like, it's not because it's the building that they're in. It's because they're the ones that brought the complaint or the claim or whatever, the legal action forward.
Right. It's the moving party.
Yeah.
Right. And I think one of the best ways of describing that a little bit is looking at language. And I think the English language, I mean, it's such a horrible language, even if you listen to different language scholars talk about it. But if you go back to more of the original languages, um, whether the Hebrew or even earlier, those languages with words, the words weren't defining or describing things the way we do. You know, we look at things and we say, oh, it's a black box, you know, it's got six sides, it's two by, well, and these other languages don't describe the physical object, which is what we look at, like the court, for instance.
Yeah.
They look at the verb. They look at what does that object do, you know?
Yeah.
So what is a box? Oh, it is an object that you use to hold things in or store things in,
Enclosed.
you know, and enclose it, right? And so they look at more of like the verb. And so really when it's the court and you're looking at the actions such as the moving party, the court really exists in the actions. It's really in the paperwork and the motions that, you know, go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I try and explain to people that really what you see in court is just a sideshow for the peasants.
Yeah.
You know, they've got the gallery full of people who are all up next, and they're going to sit there and watch these cases in front of them, and they're going to sit there and start moistening their underwear because they're scared to death of what's coming up for them. You know,
Sweating in court. I remember those days before learning this stuff. You just sit there, like they got the AC down really low, and you're like sweating under. You're like, oh, can we get this? I remember those days. But the other thing is with language, it's same thing when you know the moving party. The moving party put those words down on a piece of paper, and those words mean what the author meant by the words. It doesn't mean what everybody else thinks it means. So like when you go into court, they're like, you understand these, what you really should be doing is going through every single word and be like, well, what do you mean by this word? What do you mean by, you know, because it's more not the meaning of the general public's meaning of the words, but whoever wrote the document is the actual only one that really understands what it truly means.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you get clarification. That's the point, you know, of court. When you want to clarify things, is to make things, you know, both parties be able to agree on what those words on the paper mean.
And I think one of the things that's important as well, and you know, I guess maybe I'm going to scold you for a moment here because I think so many examples of what happens legally has been given to us in Scripture. And, you know, people need to crack that Scripture open and, you know, not digest it like, you know, this is a religious belief system or anything, but look at it as instructional. Look at it from that perspective, because there's so many things in there that give you really good hints. You know, I said in the book of Matthew, I think I mentioned it in the text during your live the other night. But in the book of Matthew, it tells you to go quickly to your brother lest you get dragged into court.
Mm-hmm.
You know, go to him and get things squared up.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up before, is that what people get in trouble, and I was guilty of it before, is when you get a letter or you get something from somebody else, you just sit on it, and then you allow it to go to court, and then everybody's like calling me up and be like, all right, how do I solve these problems? It's like, well, have you communicated with the other party? Have you communicated with the other side and collected the evidence that you need? So if you need to bring your own claim forward, that then you have the evidence to do so, or that they're, you know, that they don't have the debt. Are you asking for the certain things to, you know, show that they don't either have a jurisdiction or they don't have a contract, they don't hold the debt, you know, all that kind of thing.
And you know, you can see a perfect example of that in every court case. When the court cases first start out, and I'm not talking about arraignment. A lot of people want to argue their case at arraignment. That's not what arraignment's for. Arraignment's just the very beginning, you know. But, you know, when you really get into the case and the case starts out, the very first thing that happens all the time is the judge says to the prosecutor, have you and the defense had a chance to discuss these issues? Have you come to any resolution? That's the first thing the judge does. And the reason why he does that is because, like it says in the Constitution, that no state can interfere in the obligation of a contract. So the judge has to find out if there has been a contract already created between the two parties. Because if there has, the judge has to wash his hands and walk away from it. You know what I mean? And if the prosecutor says, yes, we've spoke to the other party and they've agreed to such and such, and then the judge will say, I see no problem with that, and you'll be pretty much done right there. But if the prosecutor says, well, we've tried to communicate, we've not come to a resolution, that's why we find ourselves here today, then the judge is like, okay, now he can step in as that supposedly neutral third party and referee the situation. So there's your first hint right there, really, that you should have kind of gone to the other party first.
Yeah.
I had a situation myself a number of years ago before I even got down the road of studying these kinds of things. I just comprehended the basic principles. And I had a situation where me and another gentleman got into a situation with, well, how to put this, with a stripper in a grocery store at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning one night. And we were all just kind of partying, having a good time, stuff like that. Some of the stock boys, they were eyeing up the stripper. She was from New Jersey, so of course her name was Angel. I think everybody's from New Jersey's name is Angel. But anyway, the police ended up getting called, and my buddy and I went to jail. They gave the stripper my vehicle, and surprisingly enough to me, she was there and bailed us out, about 4 or 5 hours later at the jail. But when that happened, I waited about 1 or 2 days, because it takes time for them to get everything written into their system and decide how they're moving with it. And I went down to the prosecutor's office. And because I knew it was a fairly small area, so that there was probably only, no more than probably 3 people that would have been handling it. And I went in, and it was actually the county prosecutor that happened to be there that day. And I sat down with her in the office, and I described the situation to her, and I told her how I planned on moving regarding the case and where I stood with it, which kind of let her know, this won't be cut and dried for you. It's not going to be a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, we're under, and throw the book at the guy and walk away. And no, he's might cost us a little bit of money, So once I explained that to her and was very kind to her and everything like that, she just smiled and she says, you know what, Brian? She says, don't even worry about it. She says, don't even bother going to court. Everything's gonna be okay. I wasn't that stupid. I still went to court on that day, and kind of sat in the back just to make sure my name didn't get called. And no, it didn't. But my buddy's name got called, which he was a no-show for. And so, of course, a bench warrant went out for him, but he's back up in another state, shortly after that happened. So whatever. But that just is an example of go quickly to thy brother, or go quickly to whoever that is bringing a claim against you, and see if you can settle the matters. If you can settle the matters, beautiful. I mean, that's actually in the best interest of the courts, if that can be done, because that frees up their docket space.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, I try. Well, see, you should be yelling at me for fighting with trolls, because I understand, like, my thoughts on law. Law is what is God and truth, and like law cannot be changed. And what everybody's doing, practicing law, is trying to give them an opinion on their law, or find the facts. They're not actually. The legal system isn't actually law. It's just the finding of the law, or the interpretation, what they believe the law really is. But so yeah, that's my problem, is the trolls pulled me away from the biblical part, and the that God is law and law doesn't really change. But Rice TV, right? There's where did I just pull that up? So Ethan, Lucas. He does a
Right.
really good job about breaking down, the words and how to interpret the Bible better. Which,
Yeah, I've been on with Chris Rice a couple times. He's a good guy.
well, I mean, he has a guest that he brings up, Lucas or Ethan Lucas. He has a playlist. There's 15 videos of him. They've done 15 things that he just comes to the show and they talk the biblical teaching of the Bible. He pretty much just says Jesus came to teach trust law, and that's what the Bible is just law, teaching law, or the not teaching law, but it's the explaining of the law or
Right.
God.
Yeah, he's teaching. He was, Yeshua's here to teach people how to live, and I really think that one of the downfalls of the churches today, and to me, if anybody listened to last week's call, I'm not necessarily slamming the churches. Churches have a place and everything like that, but for some reason, it's people's final resting point, their final stopping point.
Mm-hmm.
And they think they go to church every Sunday and everything's all good and hunky-dory, and now they can go live their life the rest of the week like a heathen and then just come back next Sunday. You know what I mean? And that's not the way it works. Church is really there, much like this call is, so we can be around other like-minded people. We can discuss things and stuff like that. And then at the same time, church is just it's supposed to be a stepping stone. It's not supposed to be your final resting point. Yeah, you are supposed to, then, you go to church Sunday morning, Sunday evening, you need to keep studying. Monday, you need to keep studying, researching. You need to keep finding what, is really being taught and what it's really about. And people haven't done that. And I think that's where the churches have failed today, is because, like you said, Yeshua was here because he was teaching people how to live. But what people kind of missed is he was teaching people how to live outside of the need for the state.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And how you rely on each other, and that, this kingdom is not your kingdom. This isn't the be all and end all. You look at the Christian community today and they think, Trump was, God's gift to America and the be all and end all. And it's like, no, that is not what the government is. The government is set up to take care of the heathens, the people that can't take care of themselves. If you can take care of yourself and take care of your affairs, then there's no need for the state. And that's what Jesus or Yeshua was trying to show people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, bro.
I forgot what I was going to say, actually.
Well, I'll say, it's like when the disciples came to him and asked him how to pray, for instance. I would have to go into the original text, the original Hebrew, because, modern scholars and churches will tell you that the New Testament was written in Greek. Yeah, it was written in Greek, but they translated it from the Hebrew, because Greek was not the first language of, for instance, the disciples or Paul or whoever. Their first languages were, Hebrew or something else. Greek is something that came in and took over that area later on. Mm-hmm. And so it got moved and translated into Greek. But I think if you went into the original words of, say, the Lord's Prayer, when they were asking, how to pray, I don't think they were really saying how to pray. It was more about how to live. How are we supposed to go about our daily activities? How do we exist in this world? And he gave them the Lord's Prayer. And if you look at the Lord's Prayer, it's laid out in trust format right there. It's showing you in the beginning who the grantor of the trust is. Through it, it shows you what the res or what the property of the trust is. At the end, it gives you the authority of the trust and the duration of that trust. And if you look at the Lord's Prayer from a trust perspective, it's like, bang, it just bounces right out at you. It's one of those things that once you see it, you can't unsee it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah, I don't remember where what I was listening to, but I think it was this common law document about how a common law court and stuff was set up. So I think they were using scripture, and I'm not sure exactly, but they kept saying statutes in there for like Moses's law, and
Right.
stuff like that. So that was kind of interesting too, as well. That even Moses's law isn't really like law; it's a statute. So it's it's like an interpretation of law, which is my idea is everything that can never be changed, or that always is and always will be, kind of thing.
Well,
So I
it's
thought it was
basically a
well, I thought it was
codification.
interesting that it was there was that difference between God, and then what God spoke out and put into told people what they needed to do, or like rules were considered statutes.
Right. Right. And statutes have been used for a long time. People look at the book, The Law of Nations. It's all written out in statute form. Those were established long before the Constitution ever was, and statutes go way back. Law of Hammurabi and things like that. And the statutes we see today, people say, "Oh, those aren't law." Yeah, you're right. They technically aren't. They are the codification of the public law. And so if you look up the public law that statute came from, then that gives you an idea of what the law is that they're trying to implement there. And so when people say that, it just kind of shows a lack of knowledge on how things are structured, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess people say statutes came from the idea of a statue, whatever, that rock thing that was in the middle of town, or something in a form of some to be a picture or image of something else. So I guess it's like man sees a form of something in the nature, and then they will make a statue in the likeness and the image of that, and then people go and bow. Well, they're not supposed to, but they go bow at it or worship it.
Right. Yeah, it's an example, or it's a symbolization of something else,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah. And so, yeah, and like I was saying earlier, we're talking about, the title of tonight's call, which is, who is the state, or what is the state? Because, people will say, well, bring the state forward. Like, for instance, when, I was at court and, it said state of Florida versus Brian Parker, I didn't use that whole, okay, it says state of Florida versus Brian Parker, where's the state? You know what I mean? Because everything, like we're saying, is done by example, or it's a form or a depiction of something else. Like the statutes are a depiction of the public law that it's derived from. And the state in court is the same thing. There is an example of them. There is a representation of them called the prosecutor and the judge. They're there in a representative form of the state. They are the state. And it's one of the things that I try and show people that should be very obvious to people, is that everybody in that room is in a form of representation. The judge is representing the state in the court. You've got the clerk representing the court. You've got the prosecutor representing the state or the county. You've got the defense counsel that is representing the state and the court. And then thirdly or lastly, you. So why would people think that you're the odd man out and that you're not there in a representative capacity as well?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you hire an attorney, which I don't necessarily always recommend, but when an attorney is hired, you sign a document for him to represent your person. Okay. And that's what's formed when you're born. The state creates a legal person, a legal entity. I think the best way to describe it is you look at Sam Walton. Well, Sam Walton wasn't Walmart, but Walmart was the entity he had created.
Mm-hmm.
And Walmart, just like state of Florida or like the United States, they hang in a filing cabinet somewhere, or in a digital form nowadays on a computer somewhere. That's where they exist at, but they have physical representation, with their officers. And the legal person has representation daily through you, and that's what people don't realize that they are doing is they're accidentally putting on that mask of the person, putting on that false identity
Mm-hmm.
of the creator created one thing, but then we turn around and put on the mask of something the state created, and but though we try and hold the state to the morals of the creator, and it doesn't work that way. The creator's morals are much different than the state's morals or
Yeah.
their version of right and wrong.
Well, we also created this state, so
No, we didn't.
well, I mean, we did in
That's what the
general. We
Patriots
did
say,
in
but no.
general, but I mean, like man, man created some man,
Right,
out there,
right,
and it's not like that man that created the state has any more authority or power or
right.
above you.
And that's one of the issues too. I mean, that's one of the things I love about I think Passio talks about it as well with natural law is if you don't have the authority to tell your neighbor that they've got to pay you $50 every month and rob them of $50 every month, then how can you grant that authority to somebody else?
Yeah, exactly.
It's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. So the represent. So that's why the first thing I guess Carl says is, you walk in the court and you're appearing as instead of representing yourself, because that's I guess one of the traps they love to play the judges is that represent game.
Yeah.
Well, are you well, because they either want a lawyer represent you or represent you, or they want you to do it. So it's like now if you walk in and you're a man and you're trying to be in the jurisdiction of God under God's law and just following due process of of the Bible or whatever, then as soon as you agree to be, if the judge is like, well, are you you're representing yourself, and you're like, yes, then you stepped out of the man, and like you said before, you're putting on that mask of the person that they created for you.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like to say. I don't need anybody to be a representative on my behalf. I said because I can present my A and my B half, my alpha and my bait. The man and the house. I will stand for both. So, and that's part of the word trickery they get into is the represent. We're not doing anything all over again. I'm presenting. This is an original situation here, and I guess this gets into one of the things you asked me the other night about some things that I want to start doing, or any goals that I have, and one of them I will mention because I've mentioned it in the group is start teaching people really how to live in the private. And I know there's teaching out there about, like, for instance, getting a state passport or a state citizenship passport, stuff like that. That's not really what I'm talking about when I talk about living in the private, because this right here, what we're talking about, goes hand in hand with it. Because to me, really living in the private is living like, what we mentioned, and what Yeshua was teaching is that you don't need the state. People don't realize that. I think it's funny, like, you ever notice when people lose their job, what's one of the first things they normally ask, Garrett?
Can I get unemployment?
There you go. Where's the unemployment office?
Yeah.
They're looking for somebody else to take care of them, right?
Or they lose their job somehow, and they're like, oh, I can just get unemployment. It's like, all right, well, did
Yeah,
you get
well,
fired or did you quit for one? Because if you quit, then
yeah. But our mindset shouldn't be going directly to, okay, who's going to take care of me now?
yeah, exactly.
It's always you taking care of yourself. So your mind should be, okay, what do I need to do now to replace that revenue stream I've lost?
Well, it's more of who's responsible for you. Are you going to take responsibility for yourself, or you're going to just pass the buck to everybody else? Oh, the government will take care of me, my family will take care of me, my wife, my husband, my children, whatever it is, instead of self-government like that. I think that's what JC and Shaman is want to focus on self-governing, or I guess Carl as well says that a lot
Right.
is teaching people how to self-govern.
Right. Well, you'll get the majority of that. It really, I think where a lot of people have gotten some of that from is from David Williams. And because if you go to David Williams, he talks a whole lot about self-governance and the importance of that,
Never
which
heard of that.
is, oh gosh, if you haven't, yeah, there's a wealth of information there. And a lot of people ask me why I don't follow his method, and it's because I don't think it's set up in a way that everybody can follow. It might be good for a person here or there, but his teachings in general are good for everybody. But yeah, I'd like to give.
General of his teaching.
Beg your pardon?
What's the general idea of his teaching?
It really revolves around self-governance and coming into agreements amongst each other, which is he doesn't say private associations, but that's what a private association is. It is just contracting with each other, and showing that you don't need the ways that man has set up, because really, when you come down to it, what man has set up, and I'll send you a link to him. Um, the ways men have set things up have been, I kind of look at as replacement theology. They've replaced God, and put their seat, they've put their butt in the seat of the most holy,
Yeah.
Because everything has from the beginning really been trust format. It's all been set up as a trust format with the creator at the top, with us basically as the trustees of the earth, and the beneficiaries are all of us and the rest of the earth. Instead, the state has kind of tried to flip that around, and put their butt, up at the very top and make themselves the creator. And somehow or another, they want things to kind of circle back around to where they reap the benefits as well.
Yeah, it seems like they want to play all the roles: the creator, the trustee, and the beneficiary, and then just turn us all into property. Is what it seems like.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I think, so many people feel like they want to be able to take control of the government and things like that. You really just have to see things for what they are and how the state looks at it, because the state really looks at it as a big cattle ranch, and the state owns the mansion up on the hill that runs the ranch, and we're all inside of the gates down there. We're all inside the fence, and yeah, that fence is electrified, and once in a while somebody gets electrocuted.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, as far as like the direction I want to move in is showing people how you can. I mean, I think it's crazy the past, what's it been, 15 years now, probably. It's been a long time since I've watched TV, but for like 15 years, I know there's been shows on about living off grid, or people living in Alaska, or, getting off grid and things like that. And you see a lot of like YouTubers even who have done it, and they're showing, how, they raise their livestock, how they provide electricity, solar panels, whatever. But I've really come through my own experimentation, because I don't really teach anything or talk about anything that I haven't physically done, is I've taken that concept and said, okay, but can you live off grid without having to move to the mountains and not see another living soul other than your immediate family that's living with you? You know what I mean? Can you live off grid and still stay in the community that you're already in? And I found that the answer to that very much is yes. And
is food, getting food, you have to make your own food, is that considered off grid, or can you go to the grocery store as well in that off grid scenario?
Oh no, you can go to the grocery store as well, but I believe that in the same aspect, you've got to be prepared for the day when maybe the grocery store is closed, or God forbid, for one reason or another, you're not allowed to go into the grocery store. You know what I mean? You need to do
Pretty close
things.
to that if this last year.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hitting at. But which means have a good stockpile of stuff in your house. You know what I mean? Um, and know your surroundings. Unless you live like deep in the city, and even still, you're going to have some green areas in the city, but know your surroundings. Always be very aware of your surroundings, and know what is available to you in nature where you're living at, because there's probably, I would almost guarantee, things available to you in nature that you've not even thought of. It might even be a little bit of a different eating style. It might not be necessarily going to the store. It might mean throwing a fishing pole in the water. You know what I mean? It might mean,
Pulling my
you
boat
know,
out and getting me one of those Canadian geese that I hate.
yeah, there you go. Or throw a trap in the water and get some crabs, or, you know,
Trap to get a raccoon or a possum or a
yeah, I'm not sure if, I could cross the Rubicon there or not, but
if I was starving, I'd do all that. But anyway,
hey, well, I was thinking about that the other day. You think about, I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was the people that crashed their plane up in a mountain. You know what I mean? And
the hatchet or something similar to that.
yeah, something. What was it? It was. I think it was named after the terrain that they
The wild
crashed in.
thing or the wild or okay.
Yeah.
There's a few different.
But yeah, I was thinking, at what point do you turn and look at Bob sitting next to you and say, "Hey, Bob, pretty tough looking guy. Yeah, you work out a lot and stuff. Yeah, you look like you got some meat on you." At what point did you reach that point in desperation?
Well, if you guys are that desperate, then your friend's probably pretty useless anyway. So
Yeah.
just the extra mouth you have to feed.
Yeah, Jack, I really haven't liked you that much anyway. But yeah, but no, be familiar. And there's things that I show, like on Facebook, for instance, down here in Florida. Um, Ever since I was a kid, I loved coconuts. Okay. And I was looking at some tourists the other day that were walking in the park, and they were pale, pale white. I could tell they were from up north or something. And a woman kind of kicked this big round thing that was on the ground. She's like, "Oh, what's this?" And her little baby, or her toddler, was like, "Oh, a watermelon." Well, no, it's brown. It's not a watermelon. But a local person that was walking next to them said, "Oh, that's a coconut." And they're like, "Really? That's a coconut?" Because it's got this great big humongo husk that's around it, and then inside is that smaller piece that people are used to seeing. So I've shown people. In fact, I think I've got a video I put out on how you can actually. I can open a coconut in under 5 minutes, barehanded.
Nice.
And I heard that woman talking, and she was like, "Oh man, you'd have to get a saw or something to get that open." And I was just kind of laughing to myself, thinking, "No, I can open that up in a hurry."
Is it barehanded completely, or is it like you got a rock or something?
You got a rock. Yep. You start out by dropping a rock on it. You drop a rock on it like 3 times, and then that loosens the husk. You peel the husk off, and then on a coconut, you know how it's got that little face on it, those 3 little dots.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can tell where the eyes are and where the mouth is. Well, if you look right up in between the eyes, there is a ridge that runs across the top of the coconut.
Okay.
If you take the coconut by hand and just bang it down sharply on a rock really hard, it will split perfectly right around the coconut, and you pop it open right there like that. And
so it has an equator on it. It's just kind
of kind of, yeah, but it's not really a equator. It runs from end to end. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So you just pop it right there, and for some reason it splits it around open going the other way, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
But and I recommend people, for instance, like with the coconut, you want to find what they call a sprouted coconut. a sprouted coconut, you'll see that it's really a big seed, and it looks like it's got a little tree starting to grow out the end of it. That's a sprouted coconut. Well, when you find that, you're going to find something inside the coconut that you will never find in a grocery store coconut. And that's what's called a coconut embryo. And when it's fully developed, it will take up the whole inside of the coconut, and it's like a big spongy piece.
It's kind of like an egg where you got the milk of the coconut, which is kind of like the yolk,
Right.
And the chick forms, and it gets,
Right. Yeah, but in this case, it would be more like a case where the yolk just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's less and less egg white or less and less coconut white. You know what I mean? So yeah, you end up with like this big spongy piece. It's kind of similar consistency to sponge cake, only a little more crispy, but it is like,
you fry that stuff up or something, or
no, you eat, you eat that raw. It's like a superfood. It's got
your sprouting stuff is
yeah,
that's in nutrition.
right. That's what's providing the growth for the new coconut tree. So it's packed full of energy. It's packed full of tons of vitamins. I mean, it's one of the greatest sources of vitamins and energy out there. So better than any sports drink that you can get. But there's a lot of things like that in nature that people don't realize are out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a book for all that kind of stuff, and a lot of them are the weeds and stuff, the roots, long tubular roots. Those are pretty much just probably like potatoes and stuff like that. But a lot of that stuff is edible.
A lot of tubers are good. Roots are excellent. Pretty much wherever you live, you're going to find cattails.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you pull a cattail up by the root and go and cut off like that 10 inches at the bottom, it's very similar to what in Florida they call swamp cabbage. You know what I mean? Which comes from the palmetto or whatever. But no, with the cattail, if you get down into that root and it's white, and you can cut it up in slices like water chestnut and put it on a salad. You can go online and look up the health benefits to that. That has lots of vitamins in it. Yeah. Super good for you. But there's so many things that people have gotten away from, and we've moved in the direction of more, Twinkies and ding dongs and Hostess cakes and Doritos and garbage, stuff that really isn't food.
High fructose corn syrup and processed oils and.
But yeah, the food aspect is just one aspect. I think when people start looking into freedom and things, one of the big things that people go down, and it can become a rabbit hole, is like the post office and the mailing address and zip codes. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And when you're looking at how people are tied into the system, I've mentioned before, there was a really good Judge Judy that was on one time. I'm sure you're familiar with Judge Judy.
Yep.
She lives down here, actually down in Naples, at least in the wintertime, and she is.
Didn't she die?
She may be good. Well, I know Betty White just did. Mm-hmm. 3 days after she got her last, But anyway. There's a guy, he does dock work. I was talking to a few years ago, and he was like, oh my God. He's like, this woman, you would not believe how crazy she is. Yeah, she came out of her house down there, and her sailboat, the tide was low, and she had tied when she came in the night before with her sailboat, she had tied it up really tight to the dock. Mm-hmm. Well, we have tides that go in and out. You can't do it. You have to tie your boat up loose. You know what I mean? And so her boat was practically tipped over sideways when she came out in the morning.
Side of the dock.
Yeah. Yep. So she came outside doing her Judge Judy, yelling and screaming at her neighbors, accusing her neighbors of doing something to her boat or whatever. And it's like, oh my Lord. But anyway, she had a good episode where there was a girl suing the ex-boyfriend because they had supposedly bought a car together, and he wasn't doing his part to help out with payments, and they were breaking up, that kind of thing. And so Judge Judy asked the boy, she said, okay, where do you work at? Well, what was she doing? Right off the get, she's going to establish jurisdiction, right? And he says, well, I kind of work here and there. I do whatever I got to do. Sometimes I help an uncle, or I've got, a brother over in the next county. I help him. And the judge is like, okay. She says, well, where do you live? Well, I'm not really with my girlfriend anymore. So sometimes I'm with my mom, or sometimes I'm with my brother. I just kind of lay my head every night wherever I happen to be, you know. And as things went on, finally the judge just turned to the girl and said, there's no point in moving forward with this case. He hasn't given me the answers I need to hear. Case dismissed. And the girl was totally confused. But it was beautiful because whether the boy knew it or not, he hadn't given her jurisdiction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
And my solution to things, everybody today seems to want to talk about what to do when you get hauled into court. And I think some of that stuff, it is good to know. But I think you can prevent 99% of it, with just preventative medicine. Don't get hauled in.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't provide that jurisdiction. So when you look at those things that a judge may be looking for, whether it's subject matter or in personam jurisdiction or territorial jurisdiction, go and set your life up to where those things aren't readily available.
Yeah, I think most people, they don't have that many problems with the government in everyday living, but I'm finding more people are interested into the right to travel, and that's where people get not sucked into it, but introduced to the idea of being free is through the right to travel thing, and that's, I think, where a lot of people want to get all the information and understand how to stand proper in court and not get
right,
whatever they wish to do. So that's
yeah,
the hardest one, I think, is to be able to transport, or I don't want to say transport, travel, and then not get harassed really.
well, and a lot of people want to say that the federal government has no jurisdiction over travel, but I think there's a Department of Travel, isn't there? Transportation, so the situation really, and that was one of the first things I came across too, is that's what so many people talk about. But I noticed that the people that had the problem with the whole driver's license issue were people who had lost their driver's license. People that had a driver's license, you didn't hear anything much from them. They made up maybe 5, not even quite 10% of the crowd.
Yeah, a lot of the time it's like they hear about the right to travel and then they get like a speeding ticket or some kind of ticket, and then they want to pursue it that way. But yeah, 90% of people are suspended license, don't have a license. I hear some people that just never got into the system, never had a license, and just want to understand kind of how to speak and how to if they ever do get pulled over, how to not get their window busted really.
Well, I think, if I were to do things over again and had been raised with the correct knowledge, and this is the way I would probably bring up a child, or bring up my offspring rather, is, what I think the only people really that need a driver's license, probably according to law, would be people under the age 18, minors. Mm-hmm. Minors would probably be the only ones. Although what I would recommend is don't even bother getting behind the wheel until you turn 18. Wait till you become the age of majority. You know what I mean? Wait till you become an adult, but go and do your due diligence. Go to traffic school, get a certificate for it. You know what I mean? Contact your Secretary of State and say, listen, here's a copy of my certificate, of driver's training and of the schooling that I took for it. However, I'm not getting a driver's license. I'm giving you evidence that I've done my due diligence, I've passed, I know what I'm doing on the road, et cetera, et cetera. And really come at the whole situation from that standpoint, because the problem is everybody has kind of contracted away their rights. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what's happened is when you go and join that private association, whether it's Secretary of State or Department of Motor Vehicles, what you've done is given up any of the natural rights you had, and now you're agreeing to the codes and regulations and rules of them. And Supreme Court has ruled over and over again that that's perfectly okay. You have the right to do that. You know, and so then comes along the court, and what's the court doing? The court is just enforcing the contract that you have with the Department of Motor Vehicles. That's all they're doing.
Yeah.
So if that had never existed in the first place, then there would be no contract for the courts to enforce.
Yeah, but if it was me going forward, then I would try to get the maybe the contract as you're doing business, make it understand, or make it read, or make sure you put notice in if you're using this or getting this license, then it's only for the future use in commerce only, and you still reserve the right to travel as you wish in the private. But I think that's would be the only time I would ever try to pursue to get a license, if I felt like I needed it for commerce or something, like if I Ubered or DoorDashed or whatever you do nowadays with a truck driver or whatever it is. But so why do you think a child would have to be 18 to travel, or
because as a minor, you don't have legal authority over yourself 100%.
Yeah, but it wouldn't that fall under the jurisdiction of the I want to say parents, but I guess that's the
well, and the state has kind of assumed the role of parents patriae as well. So the state is the parent.
If as the parent set up everything that they have no jurisdiction over, you, like you did a proper birth life claim or record of the birth of your child in the Bible or whatever,
right?
And you did everything that there is no link between your child and the government, then
right. Well, it's just
educate your child to be able to conduct himself in front of an officer, and he's not just. I saw one guy, he had a driving permit, so he's probably like 17, or driver's license 16. He's probably 15 or something like that, and the cops kind of let him go, but they told him he had to park the car and leave. But he was pretty much just like hands on the steering. He was black. I don't know if I said that before. Hands on the steering wheel, just like I forgot what he was saying, but he just had these few lines, and he just stuck on those few lines. And it's like, well, it's good that you're starting to be open to a different way, but you're kind of you moved forward a little too fast before you actually understood, certain ways to handle yourself. I think a lot of people, that's the problem. Like, people jump into this, and then they, go out and they try to do it, and then they just don't understand anything. It gets them in more trouble than just waiting.
The last time I was pulled over for no registration, proof of insurance, no driver's license, the officer basically said to me, he just kind of leveled with me. He said, "Brian, you know what? Listen, I'll tell you what." He said, "We really don't care about the driver's license. We really don't care about the registration." And I said, "I know." I said, "You only care about the insurance, don't you?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Just make sure that there's insurance in place." Because that falls under, I'm trying to think, it's called the Financial Responsibility Act. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned that to him, and he said, "Oh, you've been through this before, huh?" I said, "No, but I've studied it, and I know why insurance was created, and that's why, because of the Financial Responsibility Act. That way, if there was any damage done to somebody else, then they could be assured they'd be made whole. There would be remedy for them. You know what I mean?" And so, yeah, it's good to have insurance, and all states, as far as I know as well, you don't even have to have insurance as long as you have a surety bond that covers things.
I was about to bring that up, the bond. I think I think it's the same thing with warrants. Is that, well, the state believes you're part of their club, so they don't normally go get a bond for a warrant that they pursue. But I guess um, if you have a warrant, you need a bond attached to it. So if you damage, the person serving that warrant damages, the body, any property, then they can, the person being the bond served on that can, or not bonds, the warrant being served on can be compensated for their loss. So I guess
Yeah.
it'd be the same thing on anything. I would say a gun would probably be a good thing to have an insurance bond on as well.
Oh, absolutely. And, I kind of toyed around with the idea one time, and I still might do it, of going to a bond company and just see if I can have a bond on my legal person.
Interesting.
Period. It'd just be a blanket bond,
Yeah.
to where any claim anybody want to come forward with, there's coverage.
Hmm.
Because we know that they bond the court cases, warrants are bonded, construction jobs are bonded. I was listening to a couple guys talk the other day, and the guy said to the other gentleman, he says, "Oh, what do you do?" And he says, "Well, I'm in insurance, kind of." And then the guy was like, "Oh, like homeowners insurance or car insurance?" He said, "Well, no, it's probably something you've never really heard of." He says, he says, I bond like events and things like that. And their guy was kind of confused. I could tell, but he was like, "Oh, okay." But I knew exactly what the guy was talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with Walter Berrien or not, who exposed the CAFR accounts. But a conversation I had on here with Walter Berrien, he was saying, unlike what people think, everybody says that banks rule the world. He said that's not true. He said it's insurance companies rule the world.
Interesting.
And at the heart of it, that's very true. The more you learn about insurance and learn about bonds, it's like, yeah, they're the ones that keep everything moving, you know. Um,
Yeah, that's really a path I need to start going down and researching and studying, because
well,
I think
it,
in
it,
my
you,
10-year plan, I want to do a blockchain based insurance company or bond or something, where people can.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, for instance, you think banks run the world? You walk up to the bank and write on a sticker on the door is going to say we are FDIC insured. Well, if the bank needs insurance, then evidently insurance is over the banks, aren't they? So to me, I just thought that was a good evidence of who's running what or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, we can open things up here for Q&A if we've got people on here that I want to bring up any topics or whatever. I can unmute the board and just ask the people, try and not step on each other. We got a few people on here with us. So I'll unmute everybody. If you don't want to be unmuted, you're just going to have to mute yourself back out, which I prefer, because otherwise on these calls, you can hear a mouse pass gas in the next room. Believe it or not, it's very sensitive. So anyway, I've got everybody unmuted. You can go ahead and mute yourself back out if you don't want to bring anything up, but if you want to discuss something, feel free. I see several people here I recognize, so, and if not, that's fine as well.
Also, continue the conversation really quick. I think so. Like, that healthcare is a problem, and I think there needs to be like this savings and insurance thing. As soon as a woman gets pregnant, they should start putting money into like an insurance or savings thing, where like in the beginning, I guess that's the most cost for things, right? With the birth and the pregnancy and the birth. I already said that, the hospital and all that stuff. So to be able to have like kind of an insurance thing where you can pay for that, but then as you pay into it, you start saving up for the future health care of, when you actually need it in your older years. Because there's good 25 years where you might not ever need insurance. So instead of having it completely being an insurance thing where as soon as you stop paying it disappears, it's more of a savings thing. So that as the years you're paying into it, then eventually you'll have that savings. But I don't know, that's just a thought and an idea that I wish people would move forward with.
Well, and, a lot of people do, and that's one of the things that I talk about is that, the rich don't use money the way we use money. And that's one of the things they do is when they're going to have, new offspring in their life, one of the first things they do is they set up a whole life insurance policy for them. And that is kind of their insurance, you know what I mean? And that becomes basically their bank. So that in the future, if when things come along, say, you get to be that age of 16 or whatever, you want a vehicle, or, you want to go into college or buy a home, things like that, big expenses come along, then you've got your own bank. You never have to go to a bank. You are your own bank.
Mm-hmm.
And that's already been built, and it's just sitting there waiting for you to use. And I think that's probably really close to what you're talking about there. With health and
I want to do it on a blockchain because I want to do everything on a blockchain, but that's just me.
Yeah. Well, with health insurance, people can set up and pay for like just catastrophic care in case something major came along in their life. I don't really hear anybody saying anything, or nope. I guess people can raise a hand if they want to get unmuted again. But when the whole Obama thing came along with the Obamacare, I don't know how much that you remember, but I went out and I had Aetna. Aetna is one of the top big three, right? And I'm paying, I don't know, $270 a month on it or whatever. And at the time, I was going to the doctors fairly regularly because of a vehicle accident that I had been in. And well, actually, I got killed in a car accident. I wasn't supposed to make it, but I did. But subsequently, the doctors were wanting me to go for checkups like every 3 months and things like that, and be on medication forever, which I got rid of. But I learned a lot about healthcare at that time because I said, wait a minute, the scripts are costing me this much, the doctor's visits costing me this much, carrying Aetna cost me this much. And I said, I'm going to try something a little different. I got rid of the Aetna health insurance. I went to my doctor, kind of like they go quickly to your brother, lest you get dragged into court kind of thing. I went to my doctor, went to their billing and said, listen, I'm paying out of pocket now. I no longer have coverage. I'm not going to talk about why I no longer have it to them. It's none of their business. Never tell people anything more than they need to hear. That's probably a very important thing people need to live by. But
yes, they do.
I said, I no longer carry it. I'm going to be paying out of pocket. And I did the same thing with the pharmacy. I said, I no longer am carrying coverage, this and that. And they said, well, let's see what we can find for you and we'll work something out. I ended up paying less money for doctor's visits and less money for prescriptions without having Aetna than I did when I had it.
Interesting. You mean like your deductible was your payment was less than the deductible you paid, including the insurance?
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yes. I had one situation.
Majority of the costs for places like that is the people they have to pay to communicate with the insurance companies and doing getting the money.
Yeah, everybody's got to make a buck. And I had a situation actually where I cut my finger. All right. And I went and I washed it out with food grade hydrogen peroxide. I went and I put new skin on it, 2 or 3 layers of that. And I was like, okay, it's going to be fine. And my girlfriend at the time, she's like, Brian, you use your hands for work. You don't want to get an infection. You need to go into the emergency room. And she hounded me. And, as a man, I stood my ground and agreed to go to the emergency room. And I saw the physician's assistant for about 30 seconds. He looked at it and he said, what did you do to it? And I told him how I cleaned it out and what I put on it. And he said, that's pretty much what we would have done. He said, you're good to go. You're fine.
Yeah.
He says, just hold on here for a minute because somebody from billing's going to come in.
Yeah. Here's your $200 bill.
So, well, it would have been way more than that, I'm sure. A woman comes in her, just pants outfit, uh, dress suit with her briefcase, and she sits down, opens up her briefcase, pulls a laptop out of it, starts typing and stuff, and she's like, "Okay, your name's Brian Parker." I said, "Yes." And she types that in. She said, "Okay, where do you live?" And I said, "I live with my girlfriend." And she's like, she probably thought I was stupid. She says, "Oh, okay." She says, "Where does your girlfriend live?" And I said, "Oh, my girlfriend lives with me." And she turned and looked at me, and I told her, I said, "To tell you the truth," I said, "I prefer to remain in the private." And she said, "Oh, okay." She closed up the briefcase, took her stuff, walked out. I never heard a word from them.
Interesting.
Um, and my doctor, this gets even better. My doctor, about a month later, says, "You know what, Brian?" He said, "It's been a couple of years since you've had any x-rays or anything done." He says, "I'm going to write you a script. You go to our main hospital and get this script filled, get these x-rays done. We just want to make sure." I mean, I probably have more metal in my left leg than a $6 million man. Okay. They want to make sure everything's still in place, whatever. So I go to the main hospital and I lay like the 3 scripts for all of these x-rays he wants done. And the woman looks at it and she said, "Okay." And she looked at my name on it. She went and typed my name into the computer and she kind of squinted her eyes a little bit. And I said, "Is there something wrong?" She said, "Well, it says here that you operate in the private." I said, "Oh, really?"
Wait, where is she reading this up?
On her computer.
So is this the same hospital you went to for your ER?
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
system kind of thing?
Yeah. The whole system owns most all the hospitals in Southwest Florida. All right. And I said, "Yeah, I do. Thank you." And she says, "You do know that if you have this done here today at this hospital, it's going to be about $1,800. And I said, "Well, if that's what it is, that's what it is." And she says, "Well, I'll tell you what." And she took a little post-it note and she wrote an address down on it, slid it across the desk to me, and she said, "Go here." And I said, "Oh, okay." And so I got in the car and went to the street it was supposed to be on. I'm like, "Hey, you know what? I think I know right where I'm going." Because I knew of a little place that does x-rays and different stuff. And sure enough, it was that building. I pulled in. There's like 2 cars there. I go in, like 1 or 2 people sitting in the lobby. I go up to the woman at the desk. I give her my scripts. I said, "I was sent here by the main hospital." The girl said, "That's all right." I went and sat down. I hadn't been sitting down probably for 30 seconds, and they called me in. I was like, "Wow, this is fast." I went in. They did the x-rays and everything. And afterwards, they said, "Just stop by the front desk to check out when you leave." I said, "Okay." I went to the front desk to check out. My bill was $145. So it's a whole lot cheaper, a lot less than 1,800. So it's a lot less expensive to operate in the private.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. So do you have any videos breaking down whole life, the idea of whole life and being your own bank? Do you have any of that stuff, or is that something you're gonna need to create for me?
I created a playlist that's on the YouTube channel, Brian Parker Tactical Sovereignty, and it's called "Be the Bank." All right. And I recommend, and I'll tell you what, even myself, some of the videos, after listening to them once, I went back 3, 4, 5 times and re-listened to them until I got my mind wrapped around it, which is totally normal.
Are these videos you found and then you put them in a playlist?
Right.
Okay.
Right. There's probably, they only probably come from maybe 3 different sources, though. Okay. So you're not hearing a whole bunch of different people talk about different angles. They're all pretty much giving the same info.
Mm-hmm.
And This process was actually set up by a Christian gentleman by the last name of Nash. And Nash started writing about this back in the 80s. And he had a hard time teaching it just because it is a way of handling your finances that we've never been taught about. And I remember when I first was researching this and I was listening to multiple people talk about it, the one thing that was consistent all through it is that all these people said, hey, I went to school, for banking or for insurance, whatever financial aspect they wanted to do, or CPA, things like that. They said, we were never taught this in school. They don't teach this in college. They said, this isn't stuff that you're going to learn until you like really get into these businesses and start meeting people that start like kind of bringing you into the inside and giving you the inside information, which is exactly what this banking aspect is. And, and one of the things that I show that people don't talk about as far as getting off grid with your banking and stuff that's very simple is, the legal entity was created by the state. It's always going to exist. Okay. Nothing you can do about it. Doesn't matter if you burn the birth certificate, which is the registration of what they call an organization, which is the legal entity. Doesn't matter if you burn it because they still have it on file in DC or, wherever you were born, whatever state you were born on. Okay. It's always going to exist. And so whatever officer of the court is always going to see you as a representative of that organization. Remember that song Secret Agent Man from back in the 50s?
Yep.
They're telling you right there, that they've given you a number and taken away your name, and if you look into Social Security and how they really identify you and how it was really set up in the beginning, it was set up by your identification really is the first four letters of your last name and the last four numbers of your Social Security number. That's how they link you right there. So anyway, that entity is always going to exist, but there's ways of taking back that entity into your power so that you are the principal for that entity and the state is not the principal, because everything is laid out in principal agency relationship. I recommend people read the book Treatise on Tort and Law of Agency. That book is from 1809, I think, something like that. But 1909. But it really lays it out really well, although it's about 700 pages. But that really dictates how they look at it and how they follow it. And so, like with banking, one, set yourself up a DBA. You can do the DBA in the legal name. The state will tell you can't, but guess what? There's a way of doing it. You can do it. All right. It just has to be unincorporated. That's the secret. That means it's not a part of something else. It's only in your possession. And you set a bank account underneath the name of the DBA and you set it up as a non-interest bearing account. People are worried like about accounts getting frozen or things like that happening. Well, guess what? Accounts that are non-interest bearing accounts, since you're not receiving a benefit from the bank or from the federal government, then they don't report that account to the federal government. It kind of flies under their radar. So if they go looking for what you're doing or whatever, it's going to be a little trickier for them to find, the banking institution that you're using. And people don't understand is living in the private, you're not going to be doing things the way all the peasants do it. You know what I mean? And so there's a few extra little steps you've got to do on small things in your life, and like with the banking, that's one example of it. With utilizing that bank, I only use that bank basically as a pass-through account. You're familiar with blockchain and stuff, so I'm sure you're familiar with what a pass-through account does, how it's used. But and any monies that go into that don't go in there in the form of, for instance, of a check, to where it can be tracked as to where your resource is or your financial resources are at. You know what I mean? You take care of that at another institution, preferably whoever cut the check, whoever wrote it, you go to that bank. You know, uh, you generally can't do checks at banks that you are not a member of, but you can do it at the source bank,
Mm-hmm.
and they will cash it for you. And then you can use that account as a pass-through account. If you want to use, for instance, your debit card for different things, and you can make sure there's just enough in there to cover whatever you're using your debit card for.
Mm-hmm.
Take your monies and invest in other things if you want. Other bitcoins, other currencies, silver or gold, things like that. You know what I mean? Uh, um, Money of substance. You know what I mean? And instead of just money of credit or money, that's of account, put it into money of substance. I think that's really important because if anything was to completely fall apart, your money of substance would still prevail.
Mm-hmm.
That would become the queen of the realm.
You gotta have the possession of it though, not with someone other.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, don't fall for these scams where they're like, "Oh, we'll sell you silver or gold certificates. We're going to hold your silver and gold, but we'll give you." No, listen. We've been certificated up our yin yang all our life, and that's pretty much part of what screwed us.
Mm-hmm.
The certificates falls under the whole operation of a trust, which is split title. Somebody else has ownership, but you just get the certificate. You get beneficial use. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Yeah, like if everything goes down, your certificate's useless. Like now, if you have the physical gold and silver, then that's way more valuable at that time than they can inflate the market with all these certificates and make up numbers on a thing that could manipulate your value of your gold in the physical. But when everything goes to shit, then physical thing is going to be more valuable than if that piece of paper is going to be like zero and a gold. Even though they think they're the same thing, you think that piece of paper is gold, and then your gold is gold. But if everything goes to shit, the paper is useless, but you still have the gold that you can move.
Yeah, I remember looking at definitions, and I went into Google Books actually looking at the term certificate, and I found a listing where it said that the certificated man shall gain no settlement. But what settlement? That's your inheritance. That's something that's actually yours. Mm-hmm. Real ownership. The certificated man doesn't get any of that, as he's holding that frivolous piece of paper. That certificate.
Exactly. I had a question about your doing business as. So what you're saying you're setting a doing business as. So you're just taking your own name, but so is there a way you set that up that it's referring to the legal name? And is that creating another legal name or another legal entity that's running like parallel to the government's legal entity with your name on it, or are you actually taking possession of that legal entity that the government created?
What I did with an initial step was actually taking possession of that legal entity. Once you take possession of that legal entity, you do what you want with it. As far as I'm concerned, it's an office. Technically, if you want to look at it, it's really an office designation. So if you want to close the office and put up the close shingle, you can do that and create another, persona for yourself. That's totally legal. People do it all the time. Prince
like
did what?
Office,
a symbol.
Office as in like the office of the president, right? Or like it's the same thing. Office and title. It would be the same thing as a title.
Right.
Okay.
I remember when Obama left the presidency, there was a reporter asked him, he said, "Oh, what are you going to do with your life now?" He said, "Well, He said, I'm just going to return to the office of private citizen. You know, I thought that was an interesting statement. But yeah, and I would recommend if anybody does a DBA, you do it online because human beings are going to want to argue with you. You know what I mean? But a computer knows what can be done and what can't. You know, it might not look customary, to a man or woman or a clerk at the court, if you're trying to do it there. So, just do it online. I mean, when I went online for Florida, it's right on the top. It said, "Oh, you cannot DBA your legal name." I said, "Oh, okay. Let's see about that." I mean, the way I look at it, the name was given to me. It was gifted to me before I was even born. My mom and dad decided it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't something that was brand new and created by the state. No, it existed before they ever got a hold of it.
Yeah.
But so I went ahead and I started doing the form. It was just a one pager. And at the same time, there's if you want to add notes to it, you can add stuff. So I added in there every derivative of the name: first, last, middle, first, last, first, middle, first initial, middle initial, last, every combination. You know what I mean?
All uppercases, all
Right.
lowercases,
Right.
dashes in between,
Yeah.
quantum grammar away.
Yeah, I don't mess with quantum grammar, but hey, talking about people getting nervous in court. David Wynn Miller even peed his pants in court numerous times if you really talk to people. It's kind of funny, but anyway.
Well, I think
yeah,
the mathematical thing of language is interesting. How you can, I think it just simplifies the language really, and you don't have to add all these, extra words to make things confusing, and it kind of just makes it, the language straight, and then it also, you can, if you reverse one word, you can go from forward to back. I like that idea, but I don't like the idea where the community's taking it and they're pretty much just trying to rewrite everything in commercial, and then most of these guys are like, "No, I got all the power of the commercial, and you slaves are under." Yeah, it's like,
yeah, isn't that what you're trying to get away from?
yeah, exactly. They're like, do your life claim with us, file it with us, so now we have possession of your life instead of the government over there. I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
how
exactly.
about you just teach me how to file it myself, and I'll just claim on a piece of paper, I claim that I am blah blah blah, and then teach me where I filed this so the public will know.
Well, the people doing the life claim just shows me that they don't know what the birth certificate is. Because the birth certificate has nothing to do with you or the life of the baby or anything like that. If you really go to the professors that wrote the UCC, they tell you that it is the registration of an organization. It's evident. What they say, it sounds kind of funny, but they say it's evidence that an organization was organized. That's what the birth certificate registration is. But yeah, anyway, so when I was filling that out online, it came down to the part that said, "Oh, is this an LLC? Is it a trust? Is it a partnership? Is it a corporation? Is it unincorporated?" And I was like, "Ooh," the bells and whistles started going off in the back of my mind. Said unincorporated, because that means it's not part of something else. It's not in conjunction with the state or the county. It's solely me. You know what I mean? And so I clicked that, finished filling it out, and hit send. And when I woke up the next morning, I had an email from the Secretary of State saying it's been approved. And they returned it to me with actually my name, the owner's name, because I added the hyphen, Brian-Glenn Parker. Because the hyphen is the only punctuation that's acceptable in a name.
Yeah.
The full colon, all that. No, none of that stuff is there's only one thing that's acceptable, and that's the hyphen, which ties those two words together, Brian Glenn.
Yeah.
Because that was the name that Mommy and Daddy came up with.
Yeah. That's the first in the middle, you hyphen it, that's your name, and then the last name is the family name.
Right. And because in the family name, the surnames really fell into like 3 different categories. The most popular was occupation. And that's why a lot of people say, oh, it's commercial. Well, that's just one category they fell in. They also fell in a category of descriptive, all right? And they may have fallen also in a category of maybe a nickname or an area you're from. And, as far as occupation goes, people can see that very simple. Like my last name, the surname I use is Parker. Well, a Parker was somebody who took care of the parks. Pretty simple. You see the last name Baker. Well, we know what a baker is, right? You see the last name Miner. We know what miners are. Interesting one, you'll see the name Chandler. Chandler, it was somebody who made candles. And so there's a lot of those you can go into. And then when you're getting into like a family or a region or something, you're going to see like last names like Robertson, which means Robert's son, or Johnson, which means John's son. You'll see the same thing in Europe. They use like McDonald or MacDonald. Well, the Mick or the Mac just mean the same thing as son of Donald. And so, yeah, it's kind of fun investigating surnames, how they came about, and the types of them and things like that. It even gets into history. I'll tell you, I don't know, going down a rabbit hole here. A lot of Spanish people will have a last name. I'm trying to think of some simple ones, and I'm not having anything coming to me right now. But they end like with an I or an E, all right? And the pronunciation of it and even ends with like an I or an E. Those were people who were actually Jewish people who had fled to Spain. And everybody I've met Spanish with a last name like that, I asked them, I said, just out of curiosity, is your heritage from Spain? And they're like, yeah, it is. Really? How'd you know that? I said, well, it was just a guess, But technically, they are Jewish people, whether they know it or not. And what they did when they went to Spain is they adopted surnames like that so that they could identify each other. So they didn't get lost in the mix of everybody, But yeah, surnames are interesting. But anyway, dude, we've been here for well over an hour now.
Yeah, I can talk about this stuff all day long. So,
Yeah, right.
47. We started about 18 minutes before that timer started.
There's so many directions you can move in with these things, and I guess one of the things I just want to tap on is, as far as like living in the private, there's so many aspects that I go into with it, and that might be something, an avenue that I get into some form of showing people at some point when you're asking me the other night if I had plans for anything. But to me, just off the ground base of learning it, look at what you are trying to take care of, which is really jurisdiction. Okay. And you hear people, they tell you to go into court and question jurisdiction. Well, okay, there's multiple kinds of jurisdiction. When you just say, oh, I'm here to argue jurisdiction under special appearance, the judge is going to be like, okay, he's waiting for the next part. Which jurisdiction? Nobody ever states it. So he's like, oh, this is something you heard online or on YouTube or whatever, you know what I mean? So they just steamroll over you. But if you look at like the main components of jurisdiction, like the first three that mainly deal with you would be the in personam, or the personal jurisdiction. It's the subject matter, dealing with the issue, the subject matter jurisdiction. And then there's territorial jurisdiction. Like I said, Judge Judy, asking him where he lays his head at night, where he sleeps, where he lives. You know what I mean? So you just look at those areas of jurisdiction and figure out how to maneuver those. And that's your base point. That's your starting point. I'm right there. But hey, why don't you tell people where they can find you at, bro?
Mainly just on YouTube right now, building up the channel over there on Freedom Unchained. If you search Freedom Unchained, it should pop up. I
Yeah.
don't think I'm shadow banned yet. And then in my description on my pretty much all my videos, I'll have all my social media, phone number. I got a text message number. You can message me, email me, whatever you wish to do. That's all there.
And I put Freedom Unchained in the description box of this Talk Shoe podcast. Try and throw that in the description box also of this video for YouTube. And it's in the chat. If anybody wants to grab it out of the chat, you can get it there too. So anyway,
One more question. When's the age that is there an age that you're too old to do a whole life? What are your thoughts on?
No, I
the whole life. Is there like an amount of time you want to let it cure? And is there like you want to have it sit over there for like 10 years, 5 years, 3 years?
Depending on what you put in it, it depends on how you can pull out. You can start pulling money off from the whole life policy the very first year that you open it. It's on what you can put in. Okay. I think a general rule for a whole life policy is depending on the amount. And people don't stop and think, oh, do I need to open $1 million policy or $100,000 policy? Listen, you could open up like a $25,000 policy, and over just a few short years, it'll be worth over $100,000, right? And this is actually, I don't have the statute in front of me or the public law from Congress in front of me, but it's actually protected by the public law from Congress. This policy is. And what they did right into it is whatever the amount is of that policy, you cannot put more than 65% of that total amount in the first year. It caps at 65% of the policy. So $100,000 policy, the most you could put in would be 65,000. I don't think any of us are going to be running out and doing that tomorrow, but that's just to give you a for instance. All right. And the main reason why these protections and some limitations were written by Congress is because these funds are non-taxable, because they assume that once the money went in, it was taxed before it went in, so it's no longer going to be taxed when it comes back out, much like a Roth IRA is structured. Okay. So, you could start out at, hey, I'm halfway through life right now, and I'm going to be starting one out. You're better off if for somebody's entire life, if you started out for your child or whatever when they're young. That way, it will be worth super, super big bucks, by the time they become age of majority, according to the state, 18 or whatever. And you can set the policy up. One of the nice things about it as well, everybody thinks, okay, one policy. Well, you don't have to have just one policy. You can have 10 policies. You can have one on your brother. You can have one on your sister. You can have one on your niece, your nephew. But you're going to be the owner of that policy, and you are going to be able to reap the benefits. You're the beneficiary on that policy. You're the owner of it, even though it's in their name. And
are those transferable?
Yes, it can be transferred in time. Let's say you start one out for your offspring, and when you feel that they've not necessarily reached the age of 18, but you feel they've reached the age of majority, which would be the age of understanding, the age of being able to take care of themselves and
be their own banker
and self-govern, learn how to self-govern, right? You can turn it over to them. All right. And here's a couple great aspects of whole life is that it gains around 4% interest. Okay. So it's constantly growing. It doesn't just stay, like, for instance, at that $100,000 cap or a $25,000 cap. It doesn't stay right there. It's gaining 4% interest on it. So it's constantly growing and growing and growing. And when you go and say you were to take half of that money out of that policy, You're going to borrow from yourself, but that money isn't looked as a debt because you borrowed it from yourself. It's actually looked at as an asset.
Mhm.
So it's looked at positively. Like I said, this is a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
And that policy, even though you might have pulled half the money out, it's still gaining 4% on the full amount as if the full amount was still in it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So what is the difference between? So you're saying you have a $25,000 policy, and then you can have a value of $100,000. What is the difference between the what the so-called title of it or whatever whatever you I don't know why do they call it? Why do they say $1 million policy or a $25,000 policy?
Right. Well, it all just depends on how much you're going to be dumping into it, and maybe how long it would really take for it to mature. You know what I mean? You're going to get a $25,000 policy to mature a whole lot faster than a $100,000 policy. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like I said, you can open up ones at different amounts for other people or under their name. The only requirement, you can't just go and get a policy on that old lady Esther that lives across the street because she looks like she's got one foot on a banana peel and one foot in the grave. You can't just go and get a policy on her because any insurance policy, whoever it's written on, they have to be aware of it because they're going to sign on it. They're going to sign off on it. Okay. So, but the benefit of it is how much financially you can use that policy for. You know what I mean? If you have a $50,000 policy, and you get it to mature within just a couple years, you're going to be able to start drawing off from it and taking money and using money from yourself for other projects. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And put those funds into projects. You treat it kind of like trust money. You put it into projects that are going to be drawing interest themselves also. So now is that money not only drawing 4% or whatever off from the policy, well, it's supposedly in there, but it's also drawing money off from whatever you've invested it in. If what you've invested in is going to be drawing 3%, now you're drawing an equivalent of 7% off from those funds. You know what I mean?
So the title of the policy, $2,500 policy, that's the mature time. Is that what that you're saying? That
well, no, well, you're gonna have to talk to, right? Yeah, you talk to. It's going to vary by institution,
okay.
And what's recommended. And I'll tell you a couple of things I recommend. One of the things that's recommended is what you're going to use is you're going to use a company that has been around for a long time. There's like 3 or 4 that have been around for a couple hundred years.
Mm-hmm.
I recommend you go to them. You're safe, right? But like I said, they're all going to have their own different criteria as far as maturity goes on the policy, how much you can pull out and things like that. And one of the nice things is people need to realize that when you're going and say, air quotes, borrowing money from yourself, since it's coming from your funds, from your bank, it doesn't get reported. It doesn't have anything to do with your credit score or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing gets reported to them because it's your money. Say you had a $50,000 policy and you had borrowed $30,000 off it and you never paid yourself back that $30,000, put the money back into it. The only harm that's going to come from it is when you die, whoever was supposed to receive that 50,000, now they're only going to receive 20,000. Actually, that's a simple way of putting it. They're actually going to get a lot more than that because of that 4% that's been building up in it as interest. And what I would recommend, it mostly with studying this, is it's not something you're going to learn overnight and jump right into. Because a lot of these people that are putting the information out there, they want you to go to them and use their services, right?
Yeah,
which, they're going to take a little piece off the top too, right? But if you listen to a few of these people, the great thing about people with knowledge is they like to talk. Mm-hmm. And you listen to enough of them and they're all going to give you little pieces of the pie.
And you're going to sell you something.
Yep. And you're going to have the whole pie eventually
Yeah.
after you listen to a few different people talk about it.
Yeah.
And you're going to be like, yeah, I don't need any of you guys. you know,
They're just
um,
spewing out the information because I think you're going to buy with them, and then you just go to the next one and you get more
and,
bomb.
and, not everybody is really able to take the time and really educate themselves and really get to know, how all of it works and be able to do all the financial, responsibility of it on their own. And so to those people, yeah, go ahead and go to the one of these companies that do provide it.
Mhm.
There's some great people out there that will do it, and you just find the one that fits you best. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yep, definitely. Well, I don't think I am saying the question right. So is there what's what's better to have $1 million policy and only $25,000 in there, or a $25,000 policy and 100, or $1 million,
I think
or does that title of the policy mean nothing? Is it meaningless?
the amount does mean something. All right. It depends on what your goals and aspirations are and what you're financially able to accomplish. I think most people could easily start out with a $25,000 policy because, over, I think it takes about 12 years. That policy will be worth over 100,000.
Okay. So
And
is it harmful to open $1 million policy?
probably not. I don't know. They might have bigger requirements on it. You know what I mean?
I got you.
But you can always upgrade. You can always
Okay,
upgrade. You
got you.
can, you can always go from the
Roll into another
Toyota to
one.
the Cadillac.
Right.
But yeah, so start out small. Start with a 25,000 or maybe a 50,000 if you want. You know, and upgrade. People that have, if you have like a serviceman's insurance, life insurance from the military, you can open up a whole life policy, and after 1 year's time, you can take that entire serviceman's insurance, close it, and roll it over into your whole life policy.
Interesting.
And many other policies out there are set up the same way because,
What you're pretty much doing, you're just taking all the assets from that policy and then just
right.
reopening it into
Yep. Yep.
lump
You're
sum.
just rolling it over. Um,
So it's pretty much the same thing as if you're going from a lower policy and you're just closing that account, taking the assets out of that account, moving into another one.
right.
Starting. Okay.
Exactly. And you're strengthening your whole life policy when you do that as well. You're making it more valuable to you. You know,
Mhm.
and because when you stop and think about it, life insurance, it should be for your life.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be for your death. It's not death insurance. It should be life. It should be helping you out to, a policy that's going to strengthen you in your life,
Mhm.
not strengthen somebody else after your death. That might be kind of a hint, as to why they call it life insurance instead of death insurance. I
Yeah.
don't know.
So is the thing like, so the difference between 25,000 and $1 million policy is, it say like I just open one tomorrow and I die the next day, then the $25,000, I'm just getting $25,000 for the people that need it, and then the $1 million would be $1 million payout. Is that just the difference between those?
Right. Well, with a whole life policy, it's going to take time for maturity to come around.
Okay.
You're not going to open it today and die
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Well, okay.
Um,
As soon as it hits maturity, you die the next day. Then
then they get the full amount or whatever.
I got
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But you will come to a point, within a few short years that you're going to be able to start using a big chunk of it to finance your life with. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like I recommend, though, you just want to treat those monies like you do money from a trust. Because your responsibility with a trust as trustee is to make sure that that trust is just as strong or stronger when you leave as it was when you started as trustee, right? So you want to look at the policy the same way, you know what I mean? And that is, whatever money you use it for, make sure you're getting an interest return off from that money to whatever you're investing it into. That way it's going to help you pump that money back into the original policy. You know what I mean?
Mhm. All right.
And it's cash flow. Everything's about cash flow. I think people have
Mhm.
heard that a lot and not really fully comprehended what cash flow really means.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think income is probably what people think
Yeah.
cash flow is. Your
Yeah.
job, income from your job.
Yeah. If that's the furthest thing from the truth, man. Income is almost looked at like debt when you come to the IRS, right? So,
Well, it's
all
like
right, brother.
your most valuable thing is time, and then you're trading your time for income, and that piece of paper and all that stuff they give you is probably less valuable than your time you can use anyway.
Yep.
Like
They're
Mark
sucking.
Passio says, I think, what does he says? His money is time and the knowledge that he gets from having the extra time.
Yep. They're sucking up your energy.
Yeah.
You're letting them suck up your energy, which is your life equity right there, period.
Mm-hmm.
But let's close this out. I don't like going too late, but you got anything you want to close out with?
No, that was all my questions, everything.
All right, cool. And well, like I tell everybody every week, you need to learn who you really are, where you're really from, and where you're really at, because we've been deceived on all three levels. Thanks for being here tonight, Garrett. We'll talk
Yeah.
again soon.
Thanks for having me. Yep. You have a good night.
You got it, bro. Bye.
Bye.